from Russell, Kansas, great American. I loved to work with him. When he asked questions, he wanted answers. And economists, like to say, if on the other hand, you didn't do that with Dole. And if you gave him wrong information, you didn't hear back from him. He didn't chew on you. Loved to work with him. And he told me the story one time he went over to see Reagan. And he was pretty down, and Dole can get down and moody and nasty occasionally if he has to, except when Elizabeth's around, of course. And Reagan said, "What's the problem?" And Dole said, "Well, I am having trouble getting your program through the Senate." And Reagan looked at him and he said, "Well, give me an idea, estimate. How much can you get through?" And Dole said, 70%. Reagan looked at him and he said, "Bob, that's a hell of a lot better than 69. Now get out of here and get it done." The problem today is it's 0 or 100. There are two ways to make policy devised by mankind. I've watched this for 40 years as a policy specialist. There's only two ways to make policy. Number one is through civil discourse and compromise. That means 69%, not 0 or 100. The other way to make policy is at the point of a gun. Dictatorship. I want my politicians to compromise. I don't want ideologues that got all the answers. I want them to know that in a democracy, when you look in the mirror, you have to understand that you're not always right. Civil discourse and compromise. That's what built this great country. And that's what we must get back to. If not, we're in deep, deep trouble. Now, some of you are saying, "I thought he was an ag economist." And we've listened to this economic policy discussion. Why would I spend almost half my time on general macroeconomic policy? Why would I put this budget deficit in this number one debate up front as an ag policy specialist? Well, it's very simple. There is no more policy important today to farmers. There's no more policy important today than county agents, than overall macroeconomic policy. We're not going to get back to discussing education. We're not going to get back to appropriating funds for education. We're not going to look long run until we solve this current crisis. The number one ag policy issue today is the economic crisis caused by politicians of both parties without guts to make tough decisions. We're just appointing a super committee to do another study of the problem when we all know what the answer is. And I must tell you, as of this morning, I'm not very happy with who was appointed, a bunch of political hacks instead of statesmen. Now, that super committee is very important to agriculture and very important to the Farm Bill, because that committee will determine how much money is available for the Farm Bill. And if we don't watch them, they'll try to write it. Joe Biden and the committee that was meeting in the White House were on their way to writing a farm bill, and they don't know a bull from a steer. And so far, nobody's been appointed to this super committee that knows the difference either. So it's very important. And as my good friend Frank Lucas from Oklahoma says, I'm going to write this farm bill. I'm the chairman of the House Ag Committee. You tell me how much money I have, but you're not going to write the bill. That's the prerogative of the Ag Committee. And Senator Stabenow from Michigan, who chairs the Senate committee, has said the same thing. It's very interesting. When I go see Pat Roberts, the ranking minority on the Senate Ag Committee, long-time friend of mine from Kansas, he says, Mrs. Stabenow and I will get this done if the leadership leaves us alone. And then I go over to see Stabenow's staff, and I hear the same thing. Pat and I will get along if the leadership will let us alone. Fortunately, we've got leadership on those ag committees, both the chairs and the ranking members. So, we're going to have to take the appropriations number, the budget number, that comes out of this super committee. But we've got to watch that they don't try to write the farm bill. Now, this will be the most difficult farm bill in my lifetime. It's going to be very, very tough to write, especially because farm organizations are getting ahead of the process. It's not rocket science to understand that you don't play your trump cards until you're sitting around the card table. Yet farm organizations are playing their trump cards already. They would be well advised to cut that crap out. Now, you want to talk about budget cuts? Agriculture can explain budget cuts to anybody. In the year 2000, we spent $32 billion on farm programs. This year, we'll spend $8 billion. That's a fourfold cut. If every other sector of the economy took a similar cut, Washington would be in heaven because they would be fighting over how much money they can give each of us. We'd have a huge surplus. We've made cuts. We know how to cut. And we're not going to put one dime on the table until the occasion is correct or right. We need to make that point loud and clear. It is too soon to concede anything, including that direct, decoupled fixed payment. The American people are spoiled rotten. They spend less than 10% of their income on food. Less than 10%. No other country in the world comes close. Frankly, we are suffering from an inferiority complex. Headlines are full. Is America headed down the wrong path? Has our day passed? China, 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 China. Well, I'll tell you, China's got one hell of a problem coming down the road. And I wouldn't trade places with China, period. They're going to have, in the next 15 years, I want you to think about this. 15% of their male population won't be able to find a wife. They're going to have a huge demographic problem.